Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I am sure you will agree that she deserves the moniker of an interesting person. Saving America welcomes Nita Kohli. She started off with BSc with honors in math and management at King's College London. Along the way, she earned an executive leadership certificate at Tuck-Smith, her NACD directorship certification. She is part of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales and has her FINRA Series 99 license. Her professional career has included international roles with KPMG in the UK, Deutsche Bank, 15 years at JP Morgan, and guided Freddie Mac through the pandemic and navigating multiple crises over the past decade. She's most recently served as the global head of enterprise resilience at Citi, driving a transformative shift to fortify safety and stability while reducing risk. She's currently serving on the executive advisory board of several fintech companies and lending her expertise as a strategic advisor to risk management companies. Nita's exceptional leadership garnered her recognition as a finalist for the 2021 Excellent in Leadership Women's Housing Award and the Program Leader Excellence Award for the Disaster Recovery International Institute in 2022. Nita was honored as one of the top 50 outstanding Asian Americans in 2022. Nita recently authored a book, Operational Resilience. We had to shorten her bio so we would have time for the interview itself. We welcome Nita Kohli for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, David, for the introduction.
And we had a great time talking before we started recording here. It's so great to meet you. And as you know, we ask our guests 3 questions. And the first one, as an advocate for diversity and gender equality, you spearheaded the Men as Allies program at JP Morgan. Tell our audience about that program and what else you've been doing to advance women's careers in the finance industry.
So it's a great question, and it's a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. Maybe if I sort of go back a bit in time and give you some of the tenets of my passion, I think that would sort of give a bit more insight. So I grew up in the UK in an era where there was a lot of, which can I say, there was a lot of racism. I grew up in a predominantly a non-Indian society. And as you progress through school and academia, things become abundantly clear that there's an element of privilege that that you're not aware of. I started becoming more aware of diversity and some of how quickly or lack of career progression there was in certain, in corporate UK, corporate America. And as I progressed and got more senior through my career, I realized that gender or diversity and the advancement of women over the last 20, 30 years has been slow, very slow. So I was at, so when I think about some of the work I've done, I've been actively in my careers in corporate, been pursuing roles to advance women or be a global diversity lead. And I think one of the key things that I come to is there's an element of diversity of thought. And it's that's key, that really helps organization really advance and grow. And actually it's been proven to improve the bottom line. So very specifically, while my tenure at JP, we initiated a program called Men as Allies, because it's known that most of the C-suite and the board seat members, dare I say, were white males. And they are actually the strongest advocates for advancing and helping women progress through organizations. So we initiated a program of some of the 10 most senior below our CEO at that, well, Jamie's still CEO, to really pull the level of advocacy that we needed in the championship to really support women through their careers. It didn't necessarily mean that every woman was promoted, but having a sponsor, a mentor, or a champion in one's career at whatever level is a huge benefit as you're navigating your way through a very complex organizational matrix organization. And that program was initiated in the US, rolled out across our regions through EMEA, LATAM, and South America as well. And it brought together a level of collaboration and camaraderie across the organization, where the designated males that we had as allies, we were getting abundance of males saying, please sign me up. The point was, it was really, they were more our advocates to help women progress through the organization. It wasn't going to happen overnight, and it needs to happen with intent and purpose. You see today, I left JP now 5+ years ago, but you can see the advancements they've made in promoting women. Obviously, you see the C-suite leadership. I'm not saying that was due to this program, but you see a lot more women being able to progress. There's a lot more transparency. And this was in complement to other programs that were being led across the organization. But this Men as Allies was a pure recognition, top down, that, you know, men need to help us champion women and give opportunities to women as they advance their careers. And what we wanted to be very careful with, David, is not creating a level of diversity across the organization. So there had to be a right balance, recognizing there were gaps with the level of senior women in leadership positions, because you've seen the stats. I think they're pretty common across industry, that there's a middle layer that women get not trapped in, but start falling off the radar as they start progressing to more senior leadership positions. So really recognizing that. So it needs to be multifaceted. It can't just be top down at certain levels. So it's in complement to other programs that existed. So that really was the start. And I think as I progressed through beyond then, it's really giving women the opportunities and connecting them and helping them, helping them through their careers, whether it's a mentor, forging a connection for them. Because I think it's very important, for not saying like women just helping women, but recognizing that there is a gap when you look at the most senior positions. You look across boards. Now I see that at the corporate board programs, and how we foster that awareness and openness to change, because there is a level of, you know, sometimes resistance to change, let's be honest, right? You don't want people necessarily rocking the boat, but I think it's very important to say it's not race, it's not gender, it's not sexual orientation, it's really the thinking, the experience that you can contribute to the organization, to the institution. That is where there is business value and benefit. So having that recognition is not about the color of someone or the sex of someone. Just recognize that they bring in a diverse opinion that could really help advance your organization. And that's really my core tenets as I think about diversity and how I look at it.
Absolutely. Very inspiring. So you've had some wonderful corporate roles. Which one do you feel was your crowning achievement to date, and why is that?
I suppose our memories don't go back that long, but I would say in the last 5 years, I mean, you mentioned it as you introduced me. I'll say two things. I think some of the best roles I've had are the ones I had not planned for and I thought were the most difficult. So coming out of the financial crisis, at one point when I was at JP, leading resolution planning for the investment bank, very difficult, but I reflect on that and think that was one of the most opportune career moves I made, because it actually gave me a full spectrum of knowledge and understanding how the organization works. But I think more recently, one of the positions I really enjoyed and I felt very passionate about was at Freddie Mac. You know, I literally joined Freddie Mac back end of 19, you know, the infamous time frame. And then 2 months later, I was thrust into leading the organization together with my leadership through the pandemic. And being sort of under government conservative and charters, you're not necessarily part of the same industry groups as some of the banks or the other financial services are, but being able to create that collaboration broadly within the institute, and really being helping to help an organization go through uncharted territory, sort of forging the connections with peer institutions, with vendors, with suppliers, just to understand how people were thinking about it. And it was very fundamental, staying in touch with the health. You saw Dr. Fauci's constant updates, and we had to keep aware of state legislation and county legislation, who was open, who wasn't. So it sort of brought together many different aspects of how we do business. And I think it was quite fortuitous going into an organization, going into this role, before I knew leading sort of crisis management and resilience, that it actually brought that to the forefront of conversations. And it helped us really facilitate an advancement in our agenda that otherwise may have not happened as rapidly. So it was an enabler. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say the leadership at that time at Freddie were very visionary, and you had the support, right? And that means everything, even as a leader and you're not at the top of the pyramid, having the support and the resources that you need to really help an organization fare through some of these unpredicted events is it's foundational to the success, right, of an organization. Right through that. So
absolutely, you got to have that team working together, and you sound to me like the inspiring team leader that a lot of people need out in this world. And to close, you have a new book called Operational Resilience. Please share with our audience what this book's about and who's going to benefit from reading it.
So it's really targeted towards leaders, and I would say some practitioners, but there's three things I really that sort of really drove me to write this book. One is really, I think there's been a bit of complacency around resilience. It sort of comes to light whenever we have a crisis, whether it's a CrowdStrike, there's geopolitical threats going on, wars. When something becomes near to our territory, then it becomes sort of the next hot topic. I really want to change that mindset shift to really think about how it can really help an organization advance growth and drive business value. And what I mean by that is really, when you think about, and I have to use parallels, right, with the banking industry, a retail bank, if you've got a retail bank that's available and are available 24/7, you're more likely to bank with them, right? Because there's sort of sustainability with that bank. It's open all the time you need it. What does that do? It builds market share, it builds customer brand, it builds loyalty. That improves the bottom line. So sort of thinking about resilience from the lens of how it's really helping drive business value and growth. Also, that's something, the stakeholders, the boards and your investors are looking for. What are you doing? How resilient are you? So really sort of trying to change the narrative on that. I'm also really I take the book, I try and simplify a lot of the complexities. It's a very complex world that we live in. So getting behind the regulations, often that sometimes when these regulations, and obviously the financial industry, many of you know, is highly regulated, and people look at that as a sort of the beacon, right? I know healthcare and others follow, but again, you have to get behind the regulations. If the regulation says tie your shoelaces left to right, people tie them left to right, rather than thinking they're asking us to tie our shoelaces. Why? Is it to keep your shoe in the foot? Just really understanding the intent and purpose. I use that as a very simple analogy because I think sometimes that gets lost in translation. And then you may find the way you approach, the way you solution or build to that regulation or comply with it may be different. You may be able to simplify, you may be able to connect a few other things together that are going on across the organization. So the third point I make is, after getting behind the regulations, is understanding how globally connected we are. The pandemic was a great example of that. And it's not just because I've grown up in finance, it's a book targeted to the financial service industry. It's actually targeted with, I use examples from manufacturing, from transportation, primarily because we're a globally connected ecosystem. We really need to understand the value chain or the supply chain. It's an integral part of how we operate and how resilient we are. You think about sort of, financial services. We all know that we have dependencies on some countries in Asia. What does that do if you need to sort of advance your software and your hardware capabilities? It has a direct impact to your organization. So really understanding more of that value chain outside your industry, so you can really put some guardrails against the things that you can control and the things that you really can't, but you're aware of, helps you manage the risk within your organization much more comprehensively than looking at things in isolation, which may result in very different decisions and strategic objectives. Right.
Sounds like a must read for a lot of people. So how can our audience get more information about you, your new book, and your other outreach activities?
So please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way. My book has been published, and I will give a shout out to the publishers, Risk.net. They've been fabulous all the way through. I think of them as a partner. Can also get the book through them. And they are offering a discount for a period, given that it's only just been released. But I'm happy to connect. And even if there is an opportunity there, you would like some advisory within your firm to help establish some of these frameworks, or just have a discussion to increase awareness, please reach out. I'm open and I look forward to the conversation, because I think it's awareness and convergence in the narrative is foundational in how we address and how we move forward as an economy, as a globe, as an industry, as a country.
Nita Kohli, it has been fabulous to have you as a guest on Saving America. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks to our audience for joining us today, and please subscribe on your favorite platform.